Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to more esports news. A breakdown of Dexter Censor Martin, otherwise known as FaZe Censor, apparently exposing the CoDBurner this past weekend, and I want to do him a favor because he does deserve this, guys. He put a bunch of effort into a 57-minute long video. If you guys have the time, please give it a watch. It'll be linked down below for all of you guys, where he does expose the CoDBurner, at least what he looks like, but more importantly for all the pro players out there, anyone associated with this guy, he exposes him for some very suspicious and sketchy acts he has done in the past, and I must agree with Doug on several points, things that do not look exactly right about this guy. So I'm going to give you guys a TLDR of that 57-minute long video. If you do have the time though, please give him a view, and I will link that down below for all of you guys, as FaZe Censor has now exposed the CoDBurner, or at least what we think he does look like, and his very, very weird past. So let's start it off. Now, Doug also starts out by saying, and actually says it a couple of times throughout the episode, he is now kind of scared for his own safety. We'll be done diving into this guy. This is actually the last video or last exposing of this guy he will do, because he fears for his own safety. Apparently around this guy who we did meet in Seattle of last year, it was apparently Doug and a couple of the pro players who also sat down with him. And when he first sat down with this guy who does become Dex or Dexter or Edgar on his Twitter, otherwise known as the CoDBurner, he kind of goes by those 3 to 4 aliases or nicknames, because I don't think they actually are any of his real names, or so we do think. Apparently when he met him in Seattle though, it was actually Dexter or the CoDBurner who pretty much sat it down right away and started bragging about his luxurious lifestyle, which we will certainly touch on in the future as well. But as he was bragging about all the things he does, all the things he owns and buys, according to Doug, it was very off-putting right from the start, which you can imagine it just would be to sit down and have a guy start bragging about all the things he buys and owns. Yeah, I would not like that either. But here's where things already get very interesting, because Doug goes on to admit that apparently this burner was also the guy, Dexter Edgar, who could potentially be buying the Optic guys out of their contracts and buying out the entire team, or buying out those players. And that's why at least one of few, Crimsix being one of them, had some interest in hearing this guy talk, because as a supposed big businessman, a big money man coming into the scene, yeah, any player in their right mind would want to hear what he had to say if he could potentially get you out of your bad contracts or pay you some large sums of money. So apparently, according to Doug, Crimsix had interest in what this guy had to say. And here is where later on in the conversation, when they sat down as well, apparently the burner did say he worked for Goldman Sachs, and Doug brought up his uncle who once worked for Goldman Sachs for many years, and instantly his reply, that being the burner to Doug, said his uncle was a douche, and he moved on from the conversation. So just imagine, as a player yourself, let's picture we're all Censor, you sit down with a guy to talk to him, and one of the first few things he does is brags about everything he owns and everything he does in his luxurious life, and then he calls your uncle a douche, which Doug goes on to say is one of the nicest guys he's ever known, and he is not a douche. So you can imagine the off-put that Doug would have towards this guy. All he does is brag and then call one of his close family members a douche, and then moves on with the conversation. It already sounds pretty weird. So then Censor explains he actually called his aunt, you know, the partner of his uncle who worked at Goldman Sachs, to look up the Goldman Sachs database and look up anyone named Dexter, to which, according to Doug and his words, and as well as his aunt who looked it up in the database, there was no Dexter in the Goldman Sachs database, which would mean one of two things. Either Dexter/Edgar/Burner, surprise, surprise, has lied about his name to these players, or he just never worked at Goldman Sachs at all. So right away, right off the bat, you find it suspicious, and then you find the fact that he is clearly lying or trying to hide something about himself, which should be a code red for any pro players out there trying to associate themselves with a money-backed person who will not even give you his real name. And then Doug actually talks about one of the most interesting points, I would say, throughout his entire episode, that being apparently several pro players out there have signed NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, pretty much stating to some extent they can't really talk about this issue, and I'm sure they can't talk about the CoDBurner or whoever this guy is in intimate details, or of course the bad things they might want to say they really can't under an NDA. Doug has not signed that, but it does worry me a bit when a guy comes onto the scene, because also according to Doug, none of those pro players who signed those NDAs have been given $1 or been paid a thing. So it makes you curious what pro players are under these NDAs, and why would they be under an NDA if they have not received something in return? Is it the promise of something in the future? You know, if you're an Optic guy and some guy says, hey, sign this NDA and I might be able to buy you out in the future, do you sign that? Again, for the other pro players, what does that mean? Did he promise them something that he did not live up to? And so that was very curious to me. We don't see many scenes out there where a big money person comes in and actually has many pro players sign these NDAs, and apparently he has close ties to enough of them where he actually begins leaking information that no one else really knew about unless you were a part of the pro scene. And so that was very suspicious. Now, also, speaking of suspicious and downright creepy, apparently it was actually Illy, a 17-year-old up-and-comer mentioned by Doug himself, who received a DM from Dexter, the CoDBurner, on his Edgar Allan Poe Twitter account, which has now been exposed as the CoDBurner's account. He received a DM asking, apparently he wanted to be sending Illy a controller to sign to send back for a St. Jude's charity event. We cannot confirm, because we don't know his full name, that Dexter or the CoDBurner even works for St. Jude's. And so what Doug kind of alluded to is this grown man was trying to get the address or some more personal information on Illy, a 17-year-old up-and-comer. Now, Illy did not respond to that, but yes, it's very weird for out of the blue, out of a strange moment in time, this guy reaches out to Illy, which I would not say is the most widely regarded up-and-comer out there, but definitely one of them. This guy randomly reaches out and says, hey, I'm going to send you a controller. Can you sign it? Can you send it back signed? It is very weird, all this stuff going on around this guy. I wouldn't say anything he has done is outright wrong and outright criminal, but all of them together are certainly very skeptical. And the final 3 Doug points out there, well, he did some great digging, which really he admitted himself did not take much time. He brings up apparently fake sub giveaways or fake gifted subs. At one point in time, the CoDBurner or Edgar Allan Poe was giving out on Twitter hundreds and hundreds, possibly more than that, even thousands of gifted subs, but never showed exactly who they gave them to. And there were no tweets from any of the streamers he gave them to saying a thank you or showing proof at all. Along with that, a secondary giveaway, a $10,000 giveaway, which the winner was actually pretty close to him, that being Edgar Allan Poe on Twitter. It acted almost as if they were friends before. There was no direct proof of that, but the giveaway at the very least was also very skeptical. So you have fake gifted subs potentially, also a fake big giveaway potentially on top of that. And then very lastly, it's actually the CoDBurner Edgar on Twitter releasing these images of apparently a brand new condo. We looked it up, a $3 million condo in Miami that he apparently had bought and wanted some new renovation recommendations for on Twitter. Well, thanks to Doug, he did a very easy search on Google to find out that it was actually not his apartment unless he was renting the condo or the apartment from the actual owner, which was, it was not Dexter, it was not Edgar, it was not underneath at least the names we think he actually goes by, but again, we don't know his actual name. So pretty much Doug's saying you did not buy the apartment. You said on Twitter that you did, so are you trying to lie to people? Are you trying to get pro players to come to this condo apartment that you're possibly renting, but you're saying that you might have bought? It's a bit of a confusing situation, and with that as well, it was very weird. This is one of the weirdest points that Censor did bring up, that within an hour and a half of Censor actually tweeting about this, he tweeted about and called him out that that's not your apartment, that's not your condo. Within 90 minutes, you know what happens? CoDBurner says his AC went out, he's going to stay at a hotel instead. That right there, that's super weird. Because if he was planning on inviting people to that condo, which again, not really sure if he had access to it or what he was trying to do in the first place with that, if he was going to invite people over for the weekend or for the week, whether it's a player or someone in the Call of Duty scene, and then all of a sudden he actually doesn't have to because he can claim on Twitter that his AC was broken in a $3 million condo. Again, not anything outright wrong, not anything one piece of evidence that's like, whoa, but all of them together, this guy is a freaking sussball. And that's a TLDR. Hopefully it was fast enough for all of you. Again, please give Censor's video even a watch. Even if you don't watch the entire 57 minutes, give it a like as well. His digging about this was incredible. The evidence around this guy is incredibly suspicious. You guys can leave a comment down below. What do you think of all the evidence so far is the most suspicious, is the most skeptical about this guy? Myself personally, it's not necessarily so much the intimate leaks that he has had. Sometimes his leaks actually went way too far into detail, which I don't think was probably needed to be brought forward. But along with that, the fact he is clearly hiding something. He is clearly lying about something, whether it's his name, his background, where he comes from. And when it comes to being a part of the scene where, yes, you want to be tied to these players and leak information or potentially buy a team, you can't just do that all anonymously. He's clearly a guy that's trying to hide something. We just don't know exactly what. So CoDBurner has apparently now been exposed. Will he keep leaking? Will he buy a team? No one knows his future. A great big shout out to FaZe Censor, though, for doing the right thing, I think, in this exposing, and I wish him the best of luck for his safety. And now that I've made this video, I wish the best of luck for mine. I hope you guys all enjoy. My name is Jake. I'll see you back here sometime soon, more esports news. Thank you for subbing. Thank you for liking. You guys are great. All right. See ya.